They say if you want peace, live far from people. For 130 years, my family did exactly that. Out on the far edge of Carolina farmland, where the morning fog settles over the soybeans like a blanket, and the longleaf pines whisper the same old stories they whispered to my grandfather. Life was simple, predictable, honest. I woke up every morning grateful that my world hadn't changed in a century. Except on the morning everything did, the sun was just rising, tinting the sky with that deep orange glow you only get out here. I walked the gravel path to my mailbox like I always do, expecting nothing more than catalogs I never ordered and bills I didn't want to pay yet. Instead, my fingers brushed against a thick, cream-colored envelope, the kind that tries to look official before you even open it. A pinecone logo was stamped in the corner. Pinewood Summit. At first, the name didn't register. I didn't live there, never had. Their community was tucked behind a tree line half a mile south of my land. A neat little suburb full of manicured lawns, tidy mailboxes, and rules about what shade of beige you're allowed to paint your house. A place I avoided with the same enthusiasm I used to avoid my high school dentist. I tore the envelope open right there beside the mailbox, thinking it was junk mail. It wasn't. The first words slapped me harder than a slap ever could. Penalty due, $100,000. Architectural nonconformity. Unauthorized structure. Violation of community aesthetic standards. I blinked at the paper, then read it again, and again, and again. A $100,000 HOA fine for a barn. On my land, a barn I had built myself, 400 feet inside my own boundary lines. At first, I laughed. A real laugh. The kind that bursts out of you when something is so ridiculously wrong your brain refuses to take it seriously. I wasn't part of their HOA. They had no authority over me. None. Zero. I wasn't even connected to their roads. The only thing we shared was a tree line and a general mistrust of city developers. But the laugh didn't last long. Because beneath the absurdity, something felt off. A quiet warning in the back of my mind. A feeling I hadn't felt since I was a kid walking in the woods and realizing I wasn't alone. I took the letter back to my porch and read it one more time, slowly this time. The language felt wrong. Too polished, too aggressive, too deliberate. Like it was written by someone who wasn't confused at all. Someone who knew exactly what they were doing. I called the number at the bottom of the page, expecting to clear up whatever mistake caused this nonsense. After 3 rings, a voicemail clicked on. You've reached Pinewood Summit Community Services. Please leave your name, lot number, and nature of your compliance concern. Lot number. That almost made me laugh again. When the beep sounded, I kept my voice polite. This is Brandon Hawks. I don't have a lot number because I'm not part of your HOA. You sent something to the wrong address. Call me back when you can. Appreciate your time. I hung up, certain that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 hours later, while I was behind the barn greasing a pivot joint on the sprayer rig, I heard tires crunching slowly up my drive. Not fast like a neighbor. Slow, intentional, like someone approaching on purpose. I stepped around the tractor just in time to see a black Lexus SUV settle to a stop halfway up my driveway. The SUV's paint job was so shiny it looked allergic to dirt. A woman stepped out wearing heels that didn't belong within 50 miles of a farm. She looked at me like she was appraising a piece of furniture she didn't like. "Mr. Hawks!" she called, voice sharp enough to cut fence wire. "And you are?" I asked, though I already had a good guess. She smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't reach a person's eyes. "I'm Karen Willoughby, president of the Pinewood Summit Homeowners Association." Of course she was. 2 men stepped out behind her, one in khakis and a tucked-in polo so tight it looked painful, and another holding a measuring wheel like a weapon. Karen clasped a clipboard to her chest. "We're here to verify a potential setback violation regarding the structure on your south boundary." I stared at her. "You mean the barn? My barn? On my land?" Her smile didn't move. "You may be unaware, Mr. Hawks, but your southern acreage falls under Pinewood Summit's extended architectural review zone. I'm fully aware of where my land starts and ends," I said. "It's been in my family since before your development existed." She nodded politely, as if I were a confused elderly relative. Then she turned to the man with the measuring wheel. Start from the eastern post, please. The man hesitated, glancing between us. I stepped forward and positioned myself between him and the boundary line. Karen's expression hardened. You're being uncooperative. You're trespassing, I replied. That one landed. For several long seconds, none of them moved. Even the wind seemed to pause, waiting. Finally, Karen snapped her clipboard closed and exhaled sharply. You have 14 days, Mr. Hawks. 14 days to comply. They left in a cloud of dust and entitlement. I didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't even shake my head. Instead, I went straight inside, pulled out a folder stuffed with land deeds, tax receipts, and century-old survey maps, and spread them across my dining table. I didn't know why yet, but I knew I needed to be ready. That night, sleep didn't come easy. Not out of fear. Fear as a stranger on my land. It was something else. A quiet unease. A sense that someone, somewhere, had plans for my land, and I wasn't supposed to find out. By morning, I had convinced myself I was overthinking it. Then another car arrived. Not the Lexus this time. A small sedan. A kid stepped out, couldn't have been older than 20, nervous, quiet, wearing a Pinewood Summit polo. He handed me another cream-colored envelope, then practically sprinted back to his car. If the first letter irritated me, this one set my teeth on edge. The new total was $110,000. Failure to attend mandatory architectural arbitration, $5,000. Continued non-compliance, $2,000 daily. And the line that changed everything. Potential enforcement mechanisms include lien placement and seizure procedures. Seizure. My land. They were threatening to take my family's land. I folded the letter slowly, very slowly. The kind of slow that means anger is settling deep instead of exploding outward. I called Ron, my attorney. A man who chewed pens down to the plastic and talked like trouble was a familiar neighbor. I read the letter to him word for word. He didn't interrupt, didn't scoff like he normally would. He simply said, Brandon, this isn't HOA stupidity, this is calculated. I sat heavily in my chair. Calculated to do what? To take something, he said. Call Todd, get a fresh survey, and don't talk to that woman again unless I'm standing next to you. For the first time since the whole mess started, something cold slipped into my chest. That afternoon, Todd, my oldest friend and a surveyor with the reliability of gravity, said he'd be here at first light. And he was. Todd showed up the next morning before the sun even crested the pines, sipping coffee out of a beat-up thermos. Sounds like we've got work, he said. We walked the southern line together, the same line I had walked 1,000 times. The drone hummed overhead, tracing grids. Todd checked GPS readings. Everything matched. Everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. For a moment, I felt relief. That's when I heard the crunch of gravel behind us. The Lexus was back. Karen stepped out, lips tight, sunglasses reflecting the morning sun. She approached us like she owned the soil under her heels. I was not informed of a survey being performed today, she said. Todd didn't even look up. Ma'am, this isn't your property. She tilted her head. Under Pinewood Summit's extension zone. It isn't your property, Todd repeated. For the first time since I met her, Karen's smile faltered. Just a fraction, just enough to reveal a crack. You will hear from our legal committee, she snapped. They left again, tires spitting gravel behind them. Todd let out a long breath. Brandon, whatever this is, it's bigger than a barn. I knew he was right. Not because of the attitude, not because of the fines, but because of something deeper, something I couldn't explain yet. Because the land itself felt different, like it was warning me. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I stood by my barn and looked out across the field. That barn was a symbol of my years of work, of my father's teaching, of everything this land meant to my family. And now someone was trying to take it. Not the barn, the land. My phone buzzed. Ron again. Be ready tomorrow, he said. Todd found something off in the county filings. We need to dig deeper. I swallowed. What kind of off? The kind that doesn't happen by accident. The wind rustled through the pines, soft, steady, and uneasy. For the first time in my life, I felt like my land was holding its breath. And something told me this was only the beginning. There's a strange kind of silence that comes right before trouble. Not fear, not tension, just stillness, like the air is waiting to see what you'll do next. That's what the next morning felt like. Todd was already in the field when I walked out. He had 3 tripods set up, a large tablet balanced on the tailgate of his truck, and the drone hovering above the tree line, capturing a tight grid pattern. He glanced over at me with a look I'd only seen on him twice, once when his truck slid toward a ravine in winter, and once when he helped me dig out a copperhead nest behind the hay shed. It was the look a man gives when he knows something is wrong, but hasn't figured out how deep the wrong goes yet. "Morning," I said. "Grab a coffee," he replied without looking up. "This is gonna take a bit." For hours, we walked the markers, checked coordinates, compared historic survey pins, and watched elevation scans roll across his screen. Everything matched. Every boundary line was exactly where it had always been. My family's lines were rock solid, unchanged since 1894. But Todd kept frowning at his tablet. "You're seeing something," I finally said. He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Your side is clean, perfect even. But the south boundary, the lines from their side, something's shifted." "Shifted how?" He tapped the screen. "The county's GIS records don't match the physical plats, and the plats don't match the internal HOA maps. Someone's been playing games." Before I could respond, Todd's drone beeped twice, an alert. He looked up sharply. "They're coming." It wasn't the Lexus this time. It was 3 HOA board members in matching polos walking down the tree line like they were patrolling enemy territory. One held a clipboard, one held a camera. And the third? He was carrying a printed packet, thick enough to be a legal document. I stepped forward before they crossed onto my property. "That's far enough." The man with the camera raised it anyway. Todd angled himself in front of me, blocking the shot. "You're not allowed to film here," Todd said calmly. Clipboard guy puffed up his chest. "We are documenting compliance efforts per community." "This isn't your community," I snapped. He hesitated, looked at his packet, flipped through a few pages, then pointed to a highlighted line. "According to our most recent boundary alignment update." "There is no boundary update," Todd cut in. "There's your land, there's his land, and your maps don't get to change where the dirt actually sits." They didn't like that. The camera guy stepped closer like he was daring Todd to push him. Instead, Todd opened his tablet, flicked to the live GPS overlay, and held it up in front of them. "This is federal satellite coordinate data," he said. "Your new alignment is 312 feet north of the legally recorded boundary, which hasn't moved since Ulysses S. Grant was president." Clipboard guy swallowed. "We'll review that with our committee." "No," Todd said firmly. "You'll review it in court if you keep stepping over that line." They left faster than they arrived. For a moment it felt like a victory, but Todd didn't celebrate. He just stared at his tablet with that same uneasy expression. "Brandon," he said softly, "I need some time to dig into these records properly. Tomorrow morning, I want you to come to my office. There's something I need to show you." "What kind of something?" "The kind that makes my stomach hurt." That evening, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by maps, deeds, surveys, and old tax documents. I spread everything out like a massive jigsaw puzzle. The more I looked, the more confused I became. Everything about my paperwork was consistent, clean, unchanged. But when I pulled up the county's online database, I noticed a tiny gray overlay on the south edge of my land, a shape, a zone, a parcel strip marked owner unknown. It wasn't there last year. I knew that for a fact. I clicked it. Nothing opened. Another click. Still nothing. Just a blank gray strip. One that, if I traced it carefully, ran directly underneath a row of houses. A chill ran through me. No one builds houses on owner unknown land. That's lawsuit territory. That's developer suicide. Someone had hidden something. Around 11 p.m. I finally closed my laptop. My eyes burned, and my head felt heavy from staring at lines and shapes that didn't add up. Outside, the moon hung low and round over the soybeans. The same moon my father saw. The same moon his father saw. My land had always felt like a place that couldn't be touched. A place beyond the noise of developers and zoning battles. But now it felt smaller, vulnerable. I locked my doors for the first time in years. Morning came heavy and gray. I drove straight to Todd's office, which sat in a little converted gas station at the edge of town. His truck was parked at an angle, door wide open, papers spilled across his desk like a storm had passed through. He looked up the moment I stepped in. "You're not gonna like this," he said. He tapped a folder. I sat down. Inside were layered maps, some digital, some printed, some hand-marked. Old plats, new plats, county records, HOA internal improvement zones. Every piece looked normal alone, nothing suspicious. But when Todd overlaid them all onto one composite map, my breath caught. The 9 new houses at the southern edge of Pinewood Summit. Every single one of them sat on my land. Not by a foot, not by an inch, by hundreds of feet. My jaw clenched. Todd, those houses, how? He shook his head. Someone moved the digital boundary years ago, just nudged it, an internal adjustment. It doesn't change the real property line, but it creates confusion, enough to get developers building before anyone catches on. And if the landowner never notices, nobody's the wiser. My chest tightened. So they knew. Not everyone, Todd said. But someone knew. Someone had to approve it. Someone had to file it. Someone had to sign off. I stood up slowly. My legs felt heavier than my body. 9 houses, 9 families living in homes built on stolen land, and the HOA office, Todd highlighted the building in red, was also sitting on my acreage. My voice came out thick. They didn't find me for the barn. They fined me to push me back. They're trying to take the whole South Strip. Todd nodded. They were hoping you'd fold, that you'd panic and back off, that you'd either leave the barn or let them reassess your land. I sat back down hard. This is criminal. Just as the words left my mouth, Todd's office door creaked open. Ron stepped in, tie loose, eyes sharp. I got your message, he said to Todd. Then he looked at me. Got something you need to see too. He placed a manila folder on the table. Inside was a photocopy of a title adjustment request, signed, dated, filed, and at the bottom of the signature page was a name I recognized immediately. Karen Willoughby. My pulse quickened. This says the land was reassessed due to a historical oversight. She wrote that. Ron nodded slowly. And here's the fun part, the county never approved it. This is a copy of the request, not a signed approval, meaning she acted like it was official when it wasn't. I stared at the papers, my mind buzzing with disbelief and anger. That's fraud, I whispered. Ron pulled up a chair. Oh, it's more than fraud, it's coordinated. And they're using the compliance fines to intimidate you into admitting fault where there is none. A faint vibration buzzed in my pocket, a text message, unknown number. Just 3 words, stop digging. Now. My skin prickled. My heartbeat thudded against my ribs. Ron leaned forward. Read it out loud. I did. He exhaled slowly. Then we struck a nerve. Todd spoke next. Brandon, you need to be careful. They're desperate now. People who commit fraud don't stay calm when it's about to blow open. I set the phone down. Hard. I'm not backing off. They built their mess on my land. They come clean or we take them apart. Ron smirked. Now you're thinking like a man who's been robbed. On my way home, the sky was already darkening with a storm that wasn't supposed to hit until evening. The clouds looked heavy, layered, angry, fitting. When I pulled into my driveway, a figure was standing at my front porch. Karen, holding a foil-covered dish. She smiled when she saw me, too broadly, too rehearsed. Brandon, I brought you an apple cobbler. You seemed stressed yesterday. Thought we could start fresh. Every alarm bell in my head went off at once. Why are you here? I asked. She held out the cobbler. Just neighbor to neighbor. I didn't take it. She held it out longer than necessary, like she needed me to touch it. When I didn't, she awkwardly set it on a porch chair. Well, she said, I'm hosting a small community meeting tonight. Nothing formal, just conversation. You should come. No, her smile wavered. It would really help clear things up. I said no. The mask cracked for real this time. Her lips pinched, jaw tight, eyes cold. I'm offering you a chance to work with us, she hissed quietly, the sweetness evaporating. Before things get harder. She turned to leave, but I stopped her with one sentence. Before you go, I said, pulling a folded sheet from my back pocket. I need your signature. It's just an acknowledgement that we talked. Her suspicion flickered. What kind of acknowledgement? A simple one, I said, just confirming that you visited my property today concerning the boundary issue. She hesitated, but she was too proud to back down. too sure of her authority, too used to bulldozing people with fake smiles and fine print. She took the pen. She signed. The moment her name hit the paper, something inside me shifted. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to her game. I was playing my own. She left without another word, walking quickly through the rising wind. I watched her go, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't the one who felt cornered. The morning of the hearing felt different from every morning before it. Not heavy, not anxious, just steady, like the land itself was waiting for justice the same way I was. I woke before the sun, brewed coffee I didn't drink, and stood on my porch listening to the quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when the world is holding its breath. Ron pulled up right on time. He stepped out wearing the same battered leather briefcase he brought to every major fight he'd ever picked on my behalf. He looked at me for a long second and nodded. Today's the day they learn what ground they're standing on. We drove to the county courthouse in silence. Pinewood Summit had already gathered outside. HOA board members in matching polos, neighbors whispering among themselves, a few curious locals who'd heard rumors of the boundary war. And in the middle of them all, Karen stood stiff as a fence post, arms crossed tight, eyes locked on the courthouse doors. She didn't acknowledge me. She didn't have the confidence for that anymore. Inside, the hearing room was packed. More people than I expected. Some came because they cared. Most came because small towns love a spectacle, and this was the biggest one in years. Todd had already set up near the front with his laptop, portable projector, and a stack of maps so thick the judge would need a second desk. When the session began, Karen rose first, speaking with that same sugar-coated authority she always tried to wield. She talked about community standards and non-compliant structures and extended oversight boundaries. She talked smoothly, confidently, like she always had. But her voice shook, just enough for everyone to hear. The judge listened politely, nodding in that way judges do when they're waiting for the real story. When she finished, Ron stood up slowly, as if he were savoring the moment. "Your Honor," he began, "this case isn't about a barn. It isn't about a fine. It isn't about community regulations. It's about land. And more importantly, it's about truth." He motioned toward Todd. "Let's start at the beginning." Todd stepped forward, clicked a button on his projector, and the first map lit up the courtroom wall. A simple overhead of my land, clean lines, clear boundaries, historic pins, documented surveys. "These lines," he said, "have not changed in 130 years. Click." The second map appeared, an older county plat from the 1960s. Click. A 1990s survey. Click. A digital GIS overlay. Every single one matched perfectly. Then Todd changed the slide. The HOA's internal map. Gasps rippled across the room. Their version shifted the southern boundary northward, cutting directly into my acreage and wrapping itself neatly around the 9 houses in their office. Todd let the room take in the difference. "This," he said calmly, "is not a mistake." He zoomed in. "This shift is deliberate. It would require access to internal planning tools, zoning adjustment requests, and manual edits." Ron stepped up beside him, holding a document. "And the request for that shift," Ron said, "was filed by one person." He turned the document around. Karen's signature filled the bottom. A murmur swept the courtroom like a gust of wind. Karen stood abruptly. "That is taken out of context. That was an internal review." The judge raised a hand. "You'll wait until counsel is finished." Todd advanced to the next slide. Drone images of the homes, their footprints layered over top of the correct boundaries. "Your Honor," he said, "every one of these houses sits entirely or partially on Mr. Hawks's land. Not by inches, by dozens of feet. The HOA office building, 142 feet inside his property." The judge leaned back, eyebrows raised. Ron stepped forward again. "We aren't suggesting the homeowners themselves knew. We are suggesting that someone in the HOA leadership authorized construction on land that did not legally belong to them, and used intimidation, fines, and false documents to force Mr. Hawks into silence." He let that sink in. Then he held up the folded paper from my pocket, the one Karen signed on my porch. "This document," he said, "confirms her direct involvement in an unapproved visit to Mr. Hawks's land after the boundary dispute was known. It ties her personally to the matter. Karen lunged forward. That was trickery. He trapped me. The judge slammed his gavel once. Sit down, Miss Willoughby. And then Ron delivered the final blow. He opened a manila folder and pulled out a single sheet. This, he said, is metadata from the county server showing that the digital boundary line was edited at 11:43 p.m. on a Sunday night. He turned the document toward the judge. From an IP address registered to the Pinewood Summit HOA office. Silence. Then the judge exhaled slowly, looked directly at Karen, and spoke with the calmness of a man who has no patience for nonsense. Ms. Willoughby, based on the evidence presented, the HOA's claim over the disputed land is invalid. The fines issued to Mr. Hawks are null and void. Furthermore, all structures located on his property without legal authorization must be removed. Karen's knees nearly buckled. She gripped the table as though it might save her. The judge continued. Additionally, this court is forwarding all relevant documents to the district attorney's office for review of potential fraudulent land adjustment filings. The room erupted in whispers. Shock, disbelief, relief. Karen whispered, barely audible. You can't do this. But the judge already moved on to the next case. Outside the courthouse, the crowd parted like water around me and Ron and Todd. Some people clapped my shoulder. Some apologized. Some HOA residents looked lost, terrified about what this meant for their homes. I felt for them. They didn't choose any of this. They were victims of the same lie, just in a different way. But justice isn't a buffet. You don't get to pick what feels convenient. Justice is land returning to its rightful owner. And that's exactly what happened next. Demolition Day wasn't violent. It wasn't loud. It wasn't chaotic. But it was unforgettable. The county brought in a full crew. Inspectors, surveyors, deputy vehicles parked on the road. And behind them, 3 giant excavators rolled in like slow-moving beasts. The operators handled them with surgeon-level precision. Hydraulic arms lowering just enough to nudge, not destroy. Crowds gathered, not out of cruelty, but out of disbelief. How often do you see entire houses come down because they were built on the wrong land? One by one they were dismantled, not explosively, not dramatically. Panels removed. Support beams eased down, windows taken out carefully, roofs lifted in sections, everything cataloged for relocation or disposal. It was methodical, efficient, and strangely quiet. But the first building they tackled, the HOA office, felt different. It sat dead center on my land like a parasite, and when the excavator's claw cracked into its frame, a deep, wordless satisfaction rolled through me. A wrong was being undone in real time. A weight I'd been carrying for weeks suddenly felt lighter. Karen arrived 20 minutes into the demolition, screeching from the sidewalk. You can't do this! This is illegal! Someone stop them! A deputy approached, calmly. Ma'am, step back. She shook with fury. This is my authority. The deputy didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He simply held up the court order. This says otherwise. Her face crumpled. Not in sadness, in disbelief, like she truly believed she could bend land and law to her will forever. 2 detectives approached her. One spoke quietly. Ms. Willoughby, we need you to come with us. Her eyes darted, wild, searching for a lifeline that wasn't there. This isn't over, she hissed at me as they led her to the unmarked car. You're going to regret this. I shook my head. No, I said softly. I'm just getting back what was mine. As she was guided away, she shouted something else. Rambling, panicked words, but they were lost in the noise of the excavator lowering its claw again. The office came down quietly, collapsing into a harmless pile of boards and insulation. By the end of the week, all 9 houses were gone. Safely dismantled, relocated when possible, salvaged where they could be. Foundations scraped clean, soil aerated, land restored. And then it was my turn. I brought out my tractor, leveled the earth myself, and spent 3 full days watching the land return to open field. It felt like erasing scars. When everything was smooth and soft again, I planted apple trees. Young, healthy, spaced with intention. A future orchard where the stolen homes once stood. And at the entrance of that renewed stretch of land, I built a wooden gate with my family crest carved into the crossbar. Above it, in a small protective case, I framed the judge's ruling. Not out of pride, out of preservation. A reminder of what happens when you let something go too long without defending it. One evening a week later, as the sun dipped low, a kid from the Pinewood Summit neighborhood wandered up to the gate. He looked no older than 10, hands in his pockets, staring at the empty field. "Sir?" he asked timidly. "What's going to be here now?" I smiled. "Something honest." He nodded slowly. "My mom said people got in trouble, but she said you weren't trying to hurt anyone. You just wanted your land back. That's all anyone ever wants," I said. "What's theirs?" He stared at the young apple saplings swaying in the breeze. "They're going to be trees?" he asked. "Yeah," I said softly. "Strong ones." He smiled and ran back toward the tree line. I stood there a while longer, hands resting on the top rail of the gate, watching the sky deepen from gold to purple. The world felt steady again, like the land itself had taken a deep breath and settled. Trouble comes. People try things. Lines get crossed, literally and figuratively. But the truth always outlives the lies built on top of it. Sometimes it just needs someone willing to stand still long enough to defend it. And in the end, peace isn't the absence of noise. It's knowing that the ground beneath your feet is truly yours and always will be.